here. First of all, tell us a little bit about how you got into flat tracking.
Well, my first love, and probably the first place I ever saw a race, was here at Pennsboro. My mom is from Pennsboro, grew up about 2 miles from here. So the first race that I ever saw in my life was here at Pennsboro Speedway with my dad. So it's always good to come back. We probably went almost every Sunday through the late 60s up through the 70s. We moved to Huntington, but I would come back to the Dirt Track World Championship races. But besides, we loved everything that raced on dirt, late models, sprint cars, but we also were heavily into motorcycles and have been doing that for a lot of years. I've raced myself. I'm not near as talented as these two guys that are coming up here, but actually, and I had one of Norman Jackson's cars that I brought up here several years ago and had.
Wait right there.
Hang on just a second. But Ashley's always been after me to bring motorcycles along because he discovered that the first motorized vehicles to ever race at Pennsboro in the 1920s were motorcycles. And they returned, I think they raced several times. The last time I think they raced here at Pennsboro was the 1950s. So it was a real thrill. Ashley got a hold of me, and after learning about the history of being the first things to race here, being my mom's hometown, my grandparents lived, I'm a sucker for racing, and I'm a sucker for Pennsboro and motorcycle racing.
Let's bring up some of your you brought some heavy hitters in here. Some great looking bikes. We'll talk about that, but you brought some superstars with you here today.
Yeah, I wanted to find somebody because this is race car world, and I love race cars as well. But I wanted somebody who had done both. Jimmy Maness is from Georgia. Jimmy was a pro rider for a lot of years. He rode for the Harley-Davidson factory team throughout the 1970s. He won probably a total, he told me, between amateur and Grand National and pro races, 700 races. He was the Cycle News Rider of the Year in 1971. He rode for the Harley-Davidson factory from about 72 up until 1980. Jimmy was always a flashy racer. He did things his way. The Harley guys always had white, orange, and black. Jimmy had white, pink, and black. He had pink leathers on. They called him Pink Britches. He was always popular wherever he went and raced. 79, he said things slowed down a little bit on the bikes, and if Jimmy wasn't winning, he wasn't going to do it anymore. He started racing stock cars in 1980, and he's raced stock cars in his area around what town, Jimmy? Augusta, Georgia. Since 1980, he's still racing today at 81 years old. He's still racing today down in Georgia. But I thought he's won a total of about 300 races in his area in hobby stocks, limited late models, and late models down there. So I wanted to get somebody that had a steel shoe in their left foot and the right foot on the accelerator pedal of a race car, because he can talk two-wheel racing and he can talk four-wheel racing. But we're real fortunate to talk Jimmy into coming up here and meeting with us. And he brought another friend, Newt Ervin, came with him up from Georgia. But we're real proud to have Jimmy here.
Come on up, Jimmy. Hey, nice round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. A real great resume.
Yes, sir. For Newt Ervin he started racing pro 77, 78. Was one of the best racers in the country. Lucasville High is a real big pro race in this area. He won the expert race there. A name could be familiar to some of you guys. He broke Ronnie Rawl, Ronnie is a Ohio racing legend, broke Ronnie's 10-lap record. Newt raced all over the country. And he retired for a short time, came back for a second career 10 years later. 20 years later, and had a very successful career, won a lot of races, magic on a motorcycle. Jimmy always mentored Newt through the years, and they're great friends and drove up together. I'm really happy to have both of them up here.
Come on up. Nice round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Newt. Come on up. We're gonna get a little interview going on. Gary, I'm going to let you take over, and I'm going to try to shoot in there a little bit what I know right over here.
I think you told me your first race you ever was in, you got second place. and did amateur stuff around there. When did you turn pro in AMA racing?
Well, in about 1966, I think it was, I started going professional. And we got started with the levers, the way that come about. Everybody had black levers, and on a mile track, everybody looked the same. So Dick and Betty came up with the idea we'd get a set of pink levers. And the levers stood out, I guarantee you. On a mile track, you could tell where I was at. But you got 24 riders out there, all 24 riders are in black, you don't know where they are. So we got a set of pink levers, and that's how I got called Pink Britches. And that stuck with me. Even today, they still call me that.
Well, you may have noticed, if you got a close look, Jimmy's a Vietnam veteran. He served in Vietnam in 1967, which was an interruption for his career. And a lot of guys never regained that momentum, but I think when you came back, you took off like you never left.
Yeah, I went to Vietnam, and when I came back from Vietnam, I came back and stopped in Augusta, and that's where I stayed. Been in Augusta since 1967, and I've been there ever since.
And Jimmy's was the hot bike, and you see a beautiful example, Jeff Willis's Harley Davidson over here. Harley Davidson's always been the dominant force in American flat track racing, and that was the bike. The V-twin was the bike to ride, where there's a KR, Jeff's bike's an XR, but had success, and he bought one of the first Iron XRs, they called them in 1970, and he had a lot of success on that Iron XR.
Yeah, way I got started, way I got on the factory team, I bought one. The first one cost $1,200. I bought it. When I got it, I broke it in. I went out and rode it about, I guess I rode 200 miles on the street just to break it in. And every race I went to, Carol Raven, Bart Markle, they all ticked at me because I never worked on it. I didn't have to. It was loose enough that it stayed together. And that was a trick to the Iron XR. So they lasted me pretty good.
Well, and you rode that bike until the Alloy, which is like Jeff Willis's orange bike over there, came out in '72. Right. And but riding the Iron XR paved the way for you getting the factory ride in '72.
Right. I rode the Iron Drive until the aluminum came out. When they came out, O'Brien said, look, we'll give you one and let you be on the team, give you the levers. In fact, the first year I had pink levers instead of orange and black, but they were all designed exactly like the orange and black ones.
Well, I followed Jimmy's career because an early favorite number of mine was number 71, and that's what Jimmy was through that period. There was the local pro races, regional races, and in the South, Jimmy Maness was the dominant force. He won hundreds of races, pro races, not amateur races. And then the big flat track races, the AMA Grand National races, Louisville and Columbus, Peoria and all that. Jimmy was always a threat to that, although he never, I don't think, ever seriously ran the national circuit, but had several top finishes, including Louisville Downs and at the Atlanta Mile. Atlanta Mile, yeah. And ran for the Harley factory clear through the 70s. And like I said, when Jimmy wasn't winning anymore, he decided to switch to four wheels.
Yeah, I had to get something that wouldn't fall down when I stopped.
But what tracks have you raced at in Georgia?
Car tracks. One in Swainsboro, Scriven, South Carolina. Good God, y'all done made me forget where I raced. But anywhere they had a race, I went to in the cars.
So you probably started out like in hobby stocks. Is that street stocks, hobby stocks?
Street stocks, they call them street stocks.
Yeah,
but they got so much technology now, it's unreal.
Yeah, and like a limited late model is what you're. And what car do you run? There's a chassis builder I know that you really like.
Yeah, Walter Newman race cars, and also I had a crate car. I run one of the crate engines, and that is definitely a money pit. You can spend all you want to spend if you want to race.
Well, and as like I talked about, Jimmy's probably won over 300 races in stock cars. 80 years old. He's raced straight up through until last year. He's mulling it over about his this upcoming year. But it'd be great to see you still out there.
I got it.
I want to share an interesting story about Jimmy's transition from motorcycles to cars. And our connection was I raced motorcycles locally in Georgia, and Jimmy kind of took an interest in me, and he helped me, and he tutored me, and kind of brought me along. But one of the tracks he raced at in Swainsboro is my hometown, and I heard Jimmy was going to be driving a car out there one night, so I went out to check that out and watch him. And he come in pits after making several laps in the car, and the first thing he told me was, he said, of course, when you race motorcycles, you wore a steel shoe on your left foot, and you put that down as you went through the corners. And Jimmy said every time he'd go in the corner, he was kicking the left door of that car trying to get his foot out on the ground. But I remember him telling me that.
So you've done both successfully.
Oh, yes. I had a good racing career, and the best people are racing people. There's no doubt about that.
Well, it's an honor to have you up here, Jimmy, and I know it was kind of short notice for both you and Newt. And
well, the reason I'm here, I could see good enough to drive up from Augusta.
But I know that motorcycles have played an important history at Pennsboro. Ashley Ness has had an interest. He's helped promote the races at Parkersburg at Mineral Wells, the Grand National races. And we'd like nothing better to have motorcycles come back here to race, along with the cars in the future. In some ways, the bikes don't take as much track prep. We don't have to have the Armco guardrail. We can just have hay bales. So, who knows? Hopefully the Fair Board's interested that we can get together and have racing here again at Pennsboro for 2 wheels and 4.
Well, I've definitely enjoyed it, and I appreciate the hospitality, and y'all got a makings of a good track for sure.
But Newt, did you ever drive race cars at all? Or just the bikes?
I never drove a race car. I drove a go-kart a little bit.
Yeah.
And but tell you about race cars, motorcycle racing. Of course, any racing is dangerous, but motorcycle racing is really dangerous. And I can remember my dad, and I wish I'd have listened to him, but come a period of time, my dad was really getting concerned that I was going to get hurt. And he told me, he said,
and you did get hurt.
I did get hurt. Yeah. When I was 18, I broke my neck up in Hamburg, New York. And, of course, I had a few other broke bones. That's the most serious accident I ever had. But that got him, he was concerned about my safety, so he actually offered to build me any kind of late model I wanted if I would just hang up the motorcycle racing. But like you said, motorcycle racers leave their brains in the toolbox. And I said, no way, I didn't want to do it. But
well, talking about injuries, too, Jimmy's raced, 40 years, 50 years? 50. The only injury he ever had was he broke his sternum at a race. But other than that, never hurt on motorcycle, never hurt, as far as I know, racing cars. So it's a blessing to have you here. I think Jimmy's, with his career, all those wins, he's a Vietnam veteran, a real American hero, and I'm so glad he came up.
I definitely enjoyed it.
Well, he's a real good guy, too. I was just a snotty-nosed kid, and he sincerely and earnestly tried to help me come along in racing, and he didn't have to do that, and we're still friends. Like he said, racing people are the best people in the world, and we became friends when I was an 11-year-old child. I'm 62 now, and we're still friends, but that speaks a lot for the racing community, and y'all showing hospitality here, and this is a neat event. Glad to be here.
I've got a question, you guys. I've never rode a bike on the street or anything, but how in the world do you fall off of that bike, roll about 8 or 10 times into a hay bale, get up, straighten up the handlebars, and have enough nerve? They'd have to pick me up with a scraper. How do you guys do that and survive that deal?
Well, like you said, we leave our brains in the toolbox. Well, you learn pretty quick. Falling on a motorcycle at a high speed is not to fight it. It's kind of like my dad used to say, if you get struck by lightning, just ride it where it carries you. If you resist it, you start breaking stuff. So you just kind of go limp. I know that sounds crazy, but really, you didn't really think about it. I don't know. You there with the focus of winning the race, and
you never thought it was going to happen to you.
No, but it could be a wild ride. Yeah.
Also, aerodynamics plays a big part. You wouldn't think that size bikes, especially on a mile at Springfield or Du Quoin, man, it's just like we were talking about late models today. It's tricky, isn't it? You have to fill the draft do you see the draft?
Explain about the draft on the mile.
Well, on a mile track, if you run in third place, you're going to be running out front time you get to the next corner. That's what the draft does. You fall in there, and it's just like you can feel it. It just lunges forward.
Well, the bikes still today at the mile races, Springfield and DeCoin and any of the mile races they go to, they'll run better than 130 miles an hour at the end of the straightaways. And they draft like NASCAR used to when we all used to watch David Pearson and Petty and all that. A guy on a bike can be in 6th, 7th place and draft clear to the front. They pick up that kind of momentum. And it takes a lot of experience not to run into that corner way too hot.
It definitely does. I mean, you got to go in there. You get the feel of the motorcycle. You really know how fast you can go in there and when to lay one down. When you lay it down, that thing turns sideways, and you can tell if it's going to grip. When it grips, you just get on the gas again, gone again.
Well, I tell you what, thanks for coming up, guys. We appreciate it. And, hey, we want you to go over and look at some of them bikes. There is some great, what is over there? The first factory Harley Davidson is over there. Tell them a little bit about the bikes.
Well, there's a number of great bikes, and I got to thank all the guys, Rich Butcher, Scott Bear, Jeff Willis, who else do we got? Joe Baker, Terry Higgins, all these guys. There's displacements from 250cc to 750cc, and these bikes are made, except for my Honda I brought, are specifically for flat track. They have what they call spool wheels and quick change wheels. They're not made for anything else. They're not good for anything else except racing and going fast and scaring you to death. But you can quickly, if you look at the bikes, the spool front where there's no brakes on the front, you can just turn the wheel to get a fresh edge for the left side. The back wheels have quick change sprockets and hubs, and you just use a knockoff wrench and you can knock the caliper or the rotor off, knock the sprocket off, spin that tire around and get a fresh edge for your next race. But they're all about lightweight. The bikes in the 60s and 50s, 60s, and before that, rigid frame, no brakes. You didn't have to have brakes on a dirt tracker until 1976, which in the scheme of things isn't that long ago. But yeah, they represent mostly the 70s. Jeff's bike is a 1980 Harley Davidson XR 750. Most people they've only made about 1,000 of those bikes, maybe 800, 900 bikes total. A very rare, very expensive, very fast motorcycle, and that one is almost like new. So be sure to take a look at it. It came just the way you see it, with no brakes in 1980.
And we're going to get some bikes out there, aren't we?
Awesome.
About 2:30, 3 o'clock. Hopefully the racetrack dries, and you're going to get to see them turn up the wick a little bit.
Well, I got Newt here for that on my bike.
All right, that sounds good.
I'm going to make some laps, but Newt can go fast. Joe Baker can go fast, so we'll see some cool stuff.
All right, thank you. Hey, nice round of applause, guys. And I want you to go over and talk to these guys. Let me tell you a lot of great stories. We're going to take a little break here in the action. Hold on, Ashley's on his way. And